I was there. I did things I regret.
You are not the same man. You are not the same man you were then.
Rock Creek's air was a dry rasp in my lungs, tasting of dust and the bitter memory of burnt wood. For weeks, I'd been riding, every mile a dusty testament to a life I was trying to outrun. My name is Virgil Hayes, and for the better part of 2 decades, I'd been a ghost. A scout for the 7th Cavalry. I saw things in the Indian Wars that no man should, and did things I'll never tell a soul. The blood on my hands, the screams in my head, they followed me like my own shadow. I didn't want a new life. I wanted a place to quietly finish the old one, a piece of land as empty and broken as I felt. That's what led me to the strange auction that morning. The whole town turned out, not to celebrate but to stare and whisper from a safe distance at what was being sold. Roughly 12 acres red rock, sun-baked earth, and not much else. The starting price was 12 cents. A few men in polished boots shifted, then went still. The whispers moved like a snake in dry grass. Cursed land, graveyard of secrets, a place where the sun won't shine. What was a curse to a man who already lived under one? I raised my hand. 12 cents. My voice, rough with whiskey and wind, cracked the quiet like a gunshot. Heads turned, no envy in their eyes, only pity, and something close to fear. "Do I hear anything higher?" the auctioneer called. Silence. The gavel fell. Thud. The land belonged to Virgil Hayes. On the ride out, their judgment rode with me, heavy as a wet coat. "Do not go there," it said. But I had nothing left to lose. A 12-cent claim with only rock and sun familiar company. The track threaded a hollowing canyon, a crack in the desert floor that promised heat and not much else. Far off, a low rise shimmered in the haze. My heart didn't sink. It just kept its old, tired beat. Then my hand tightened on the reins. The stillness wasn't natural. The air held its breath. I wasn't buying just dirt. What waited wasn't a body at all, but a horse, a painted mare, hobbled and left in the thin shade of a rock lip. Cruel work. Crueler still was the sound I heard next. A ragged cough, thin as paper, seeping from a crease in the cliff. I dismounted, palms settling on the grip of my Colt. Old instincts climbed out of the grave scout, tracker, the sort of man who finds what's hidden, whether he wants to or not. I moved quiet, the fine red sand swallowing my steps. I leaned into the crevice. Eyes found me black, bright, feral. She wasn't bound. She crouched, Winchester tight to her shoulder, jaw clenched white. A dark bloom stained her buckskin at the ribs. Young, Apache. I lifted both hands, empty. "I won't hurt you," I said low. "I just bought this land." Her English was broken knife short, all edges. "Go." I backed a step. This wasn't my fight. I'd come here to be forgotten, but I couldn't ride off and leave a wounded girl to cook under the sky. I slipped the cowhide canteen from my hip and eased it to her. She watched me the whole way, then snatched it in one quick move, drinking slow, careful sips, as if each might cut. While she drank, I saw the pouch at her belt tight woven, beaded with a pattern of water and 2 snakes. Not a trinket, a mark, a responsibility. Something twisted in my gut. 12 cents hadn't bought me a bargain. It had bought me a lie. I settled a respectful distance away, back against the rock. The sun slid down and set the canyon walls on fire. I'd heard her name before, from an Indian agent with whiskey-loose lips. Micah Young, clever, too brave for her age. Why here, alone? Who'd done this? Hoofbeats answered, not mine. A file of riders slid through the canyon with the care of men who aim to keep breathing. Dust coats, wide hats, guns easy at hand, no badges. The man at their head drew up and looked me over, then let his gaze drift to the crevice. "New owner," he said, voice polished as a banker's watch chain. He eased his horse forward. "Silas Vance. I'll give you $1,000 for this patch right now. You can ride on." My stomach, old and honest, told me not to play cards with this one. My conscience, which had slept too long, told me not to sell a life. I shook my head, hand resting on the Colt. "Not for sale. This." The smile left his face by degrees. His eyes went rattlesnake flat. "You just made the worst mistake of your life," he said. The curse on this land isn't what you think. It's what we put on it, and we'll be back to collect." He turned his horse. The column flowed after him and vanished in the bends, his words hanging in the hot air like wire. I waited until the dust laid down. Then I slid closer to the crevice. She still had the Winchester steady, but the barrel trembled from pain, not fear. She pointed to her beaded pouch and rasped one word: water. I refilled the canteen from my saddlebag and handed it over. She drank, never taking her eyes off me. No thanks, no softness, just a silent weighing. With a grimace, she untied the pouch and tipped it. A pinch of pale sand, a few smooth river stones. No map, no gold. Her voice scraped like cedar. "Not this. Spring. A beat. They want spring. Kill my people." The truth struck harder than any bullet. A spring somewhere under these rocks, a life vein in a place that kills anything careless. 12 cents had bought paper enough to make theft look tidy. Vance didn't want a railroad so much as he wanted the water to feed it and to starve everyone else. "They won't stop," she said. "They kill you, kill me. I could ride out. Leave the ghost of a girl to haunt someone else's sleep." I'd done it before, and the faces had followed me anyway. My old commander's voice, silk over steel, whispered from the past, "You can't win against progress, Hayes." But I knew what progress meant in a mouth like Vance's. A clean shirt for the man who turned the tap. I tore a strip from my shirt and wrapped her ribs. She watched every move, jaw set, suffering without sound. "We need to move," I said. "They'll be back in an hour. Less." She hesitated, then gave one short nod. We climbed to a stone shelf where the canyon forked, and I laid the ground like I used to angles, distances, cover that wasn't there until you needed it. I counted what I had: 6 in the Colt, 4 more in the belt, her Winchester with maybe a dozen, 2 knives, 1 painted mare too tired to run. "Why you stay?" she said at last, words hard. "Cut. You ride. Live." Because if I left, I'd keep leaving until there was nothing left of me to carry. I met her eyes. "This is where I stop running. This too." She held my gaze longer than I thought she would, then turned away and checked the rifle's sights. Not trust, not yet. But the hate had cooled a degree. The light bled out of the world. Hooves came again, slow, sure, the rhythm of men who believed they owned whatever they could circle. Vance didn't shout. Men like him didn't need to. Torches winked to life. The plan was obvious. Smoke us out, burn us down, write it off. We melted into the rock's narrow veins. The air cooled, faintly damp. The scent of mineral and old rain touched my nose. She laid a palm to the wall as if greeting an elder. "Here," she whispered. "Stone remembers." The first scout edged past our cut. I lifted the Colt. Her hand pressed mine down. "Not yet. Patience. Let them bunch. Let the stone double our noise." When they did, we struck. One clean shot from her horse screamed. Rider fell. I fired once, and the Colt spit flame. Echoes rattled like a canyon full of rifles. Men swore, reined back, fired blind. For a heartbeat, I thought fear might carry them off. Vance's voice floated in, smooth and cold. "Hold, smoke them." Brush crackled. Heat licked the air. We fell back into a tighter seam, coughing through damp cloths. A bullet found my thigh-white pain. Hot run. I crawled and left a dark smear on the rock. She dragged the Winchester to me and pushed it into my hands. Her fingers shook, not with fear, with fury. "Fight," she said. I chambered around and did. We bought breaths. No more. But breaths decide battles. And somewhere between the first gunshot and the last echo, I felt the scale tip not toward victory, not yet, but toward something I hadn't carried in years. Hope thin as a thread, strong as a promise. If you enjoy the story, hit that subscribe button right away. And if you don't, then just hit the like button anyway to keep more Wild West love stories coming. The moment Silas Vance and his men vanished into the shadows of the canyon, I knew I had stepped past the point of no return. The air, once heavy and still, shifted and carried with it the faint, metallic tang of powder, a warning, sharp and cold, like the taste of a storm rolling in from far-off plains. My old instincts, long buried, stirred from their grave. They whispered for me to leave, to turn the horse, abandon the girl, and let the land swallow her story without me. But the memory of her eyes, the wild fire there, raw and unbroken, kept me rooted to the stone. I had seen that same fire in the faces of old chiefs, men who refused to bow even as the rifles lined against them. And then there was my conscience, that old ghost I had carried longer than any saddle sore, murmuring in my ear, "Not again." I moved to the crevice. The girl Mika was still there, crouched low, Winchester braced, her body tense as a drawn bow. She did not flinch when I stepped closer, only narrowed her eyes and pressed the barrel tighter into her shoulder. I lifted my hand slowly. "They'll be back," I said. My voice rasped low, almost part of the dust itself. "You can't stay here." She didn't answer at first, only studied me as if weighing every bone and scar I carried. Finally she spoke, broken English, rough as chipped stone. "Not with them?" "No," I said. "I just bought this land, for 12 cents. Her gaze flickered. She lowered the rifle, though not much, then pointed to the pouch at her belt. Her lips shaped one word that seemed to cost her strength. "Water." I fetched the canteen from my saddlebag and passed it forward. She caught it without breaking eye contact. Each sip she took was slow, measured, but her eyes burned with the same sharp mistrust. When she finished, her hand trembled as she unfastened the pouch. Inside lay only a few smooth stones and a pinch of red sand. Her voice rasped again, thin as a dying ember. "Not treasure. Spring. They want water. They kill my people." The truth struck harder than a bullet. This land was not worthless. It was a lie sold cheap to cover something priceless, a spring, hidden deep in the desert's ribs. Water was life here, and men like Vance would bleed the earth dry to own it. I remembered a night in a saloon, whispers of a railroad baron buying land, bribing clerks, turning water into paper and paper into power. Vance wasn't after progress. He was after control. "They won't stop," she said. "They kill you, kill me." I nodded. She was right. I could leave right out and let the desert claim her, but I knew the ghosts would follow me, same as always. Or I could stay and make a stand. My old commander's words rose again. "You can't win against progress." But progress was only another name for greed. I looked at her, at the stubborn fire that refused to die, and made my choice. "We fight," I said. Her eyes widened a fraction, then softened into something almost like understanding. I tore a strip from my shirt and bound the wound in her side. She winced but didn't complain. Together we moved, her steps unsteady yet determined, the rifle hanging at her side. Above us, the canyon walls glowed like iron pulled from a forge, and every echo of hoofbeats felt like a warning drum. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. I was angry. We found a stone shelf where the canyon split in 2 directions. From there, I could see the narrow trail where Vance's riders would return. My mind fell back into old patterns, measuring distances in breaths, laying cover, counting cartridges like rosary beads. The difference was sharp as a knife. Once, I had fought for pay. Now I would fight for something heavier than gold, my battered soul, and the life of this girl who reminded me of every wrong I had carved into this desert. "Why you stay?" she asked suddenly, voice halting, sharp. "You can go, ride far." The question cut me open. Faces flickered, women clutching children in burning wickiups, a boy's scream that still woke me at night. "Because if I leave," I told her, voice low, "I'll never stop running. This is where I stand." She studied me for a long while, then gave a single nod. It wasn't trust, but it wasn't hatred either. The sun bled toward the horizon, smearing the cliffs in blood-orange light. Hooves carried on the wind, steady and deliberate. Vance was coming. We had maybe an hour. I counted, 6 in the Colt, 4 on my belt. Micah's Winchester, maybe a dozen rounds. Not enough against a dozen men, but the canyon could fight with us. I showed her how to angle fire so the echoes would multiply, how to let stone trick men into hearing rifles where none were. She listened keenly, eyes narrowing with understanding. When dusk settled, the first scout appeared. I raised my Colt, but her hand pressed mine down. "Not yet," she whispered. "Patience. Let them come closer." When they bunched at the mouth, we struck. Her shot cracked the twilight, one rider down. My Colt spat flame, the canyon doubling the thunder. Horses reared, curses flew, gunfire rattled off stone, until it sounded like the cliffs themselves had joined the fight. For a heartbeat, I believed fear might scatter them, but Vance's voice rolled out calm and steady, like a banker balancing books. "Hold your fire, smoke them out." Torches hissed, flames clawed the air, smoke coiled through the fissure. We fell back, coughing. Micah stumbled, blood seeping fresh through the bandage. I pressed cloth to her face, covering her mouth. The stench dragged old memories from me, villages burning, children crying, but I shoved them down. Not this time. I slipped through a side gap, drawing their fire. Bullets sparked against stone. One grazed my arm, another tore hot into my thigh. I hit the ground hard, grit in my teeth, Colt nearly empty. Blood ran warm down my leg. Through the haze I saw Micah crawling toward me, dragging the Winchester. Her hands trembled, not with fear but rage. She looked at me, saw the blood, the old ghost of the uniform I had once worn. She could have left me. Instead, she pushed the rifle into my hands. One word, soft as breath, heavy as thunder: fight. Veset. That choice stunned me more than the wounds. Not vengeance, but alliance. Not hate, but survival together. That single word bound us closer than any oath. I hauled myself upright, chambered the rifle. The next volley cracked like lightning. One man tumbled from his saddle. Another turned his horse in panic. Vance's voice grew sharper, his orders desperate. The tide shifted, if only for a breath. But breaths decide battle, and for the first time since I laid 12 cents on cursed ground, I felt something stir in me I had not known in years. Hope. If you like Wild West love stories or Wild West stories, drop a bunch of 1 second and your place in the comments for the Wild West Love channel. Tell me where you're listening from so I don't feel so alone out here. The chase was a slow, punishing dance. Every twist of the canyon threatened ambush, every shadow another snare. Micah guided us with quiet certainty, her eyes sharp despite the wound burning at her side. She never complained. In that harsh country, where cruelty outlasted mercy, a thread of trust bound us thin, fragile, yet stronger than silence. One night by a low fire, her voice broke the hush. She spoke of her people, the rites once braided into desert days, the long walk, promises turned to chains, the massacres by men in blue. Her words struck like a club. I saw faces, women, children, smoke rising over torn earth. My chest tightened with the copper taste of guilt. "I was there," I said at last, raw as stone ground under boot. I was a scout. Her eyes, dark as a starless cut of sky, fixed on me. With them? With the men who killed my people? I forced the truth past my teeth. Yes, I carried orders that broke families. I did things I regret. I told her how signatures in tents became death on horseback, how dawn carried ruin to villages that had never raised a rifle. She listened without flinching, and when I finished, she spoke steady as bedrock. "I have seen many men with blood on their hands. Few who face it. You are not the same man." Her fingers brushed mine, a gesture slight as breath. The glass-fine trust did not shatter. A small sound broke between us, the crackle of mesquite in the fire, the hush of desert wind in the sagebrush. It seemed the land itself was listening. At first light, the hunt pressed close again. Vance's men moved like wolves, tireless and patient. We rationed what little we had, 3 swallows each, the last for the horses. Heat pressed the canyon like iron straight from a forge. The animals stumbled, foam drying white at their jaws. My own lips split, salt stinging in the cracks. By mid-afternoon a cairn rose, no higher than a boot heel. To me, just fallen rock. To her, a message. She brushed aside dust to reveal a braid of yucca fiber. "My mother's mark," she murmured. "Old path." Pride and pain braided her words. A draw appeared to dead end, blocked by mesquite and catclaw. Then I saw what she saw, white mineral streaks down the wall. She pressed her palm to the stone, whispered, "Water breath." Moist air seeped through a seam. She listened, then nodded. "Tunnels. Vance watches mouths, not belly." "Tell me about him," I said. the taste of iron still in my mouth. As we moved, her voice kept rhythm with her steps. He came with papers, with men in coats, and soldiers who wore no uniforms in the dark. They said the spring belonged to government. They spoke of Iron Road, new future. My uncle said the spring is older than paper. That night riders came scarves on faces, one star flashing when papers came out. They fired on wiki-ups. My uncle fell. My cousin, no whiskers yet, fell. Vance watched from his horse. At a notch she stopped. He bought the deputy, the clerk, empty bellies and full ones. Your 12 cents meant to make us small. She tapped the beaded pouch on her belt. He needs clean paper. He needs us gone. Her words tore open an old wound. I saw Major Culver under lamplight, orders drafted by a lawyer in new boots, gold watch gleaming, murder written down like maintenance. I had called it army business. Now I saw Vance's coin behind every line. I was part of it, I confessed. I scouted their routes. Micah studied me like a hawk weighing wind. And now I stop it. She nodded once. Then we hurry. Evening dimmed the sky to dull tin. Light thinned until every edge could cut. Twice we lay flat as riders passed above, dust sifting down like dry tears. A stray shot cracked rock by my head. We crawled on until a seam opened, no wider than a man's ribs. "Here," she whispered, "my grandmother's path." We slid sideways through the slot, stone scraping packs. It widened to a chamber, roof smoke, dark, walls crusted with salt lace. Beneath, water whispered. We knelt, palms damp, really flooding us. We split 2 strips of jerky and 4 swallows. I gave her 3. For the first time in years, something eased against the weight in my chest, a hairline seam of light. She tried to return one, but I pushed her hand away. "Keep it. I've been thirsty longer than you've been alive." Her quick smile warmed the cave more than fire. In that moment, for the first time in years, I felt something stir against the weight of my guilt. Not forgiveness, but a crack of light. The tunnel bent and bent again, refusing to be read. She guided by touch. Rough wall right, cool air left, white crust straight. Her fingers found a soot-black palm print. We hid here when soldiers came. My mother said the rock keeps its old counsel, mad. And so it kept our secret too, 2 exiles, guilty and scarred. After what felt an hour, we rose into a chamber with a faint draft. Another opening lay ahead. "Careful," she said. "This one looks out." We peered down into a pale arroyo. A line of riders crept along, torches glowing like beads on a rawhide string. 12, maybe more. Vance rode at the center, straight-backed, calm as a banker reading ledgers. His voice carried, "Fan out. Rats always have a nest. Smoke what you can't reach." Like. We pulled back. "We can't run that way," I said. "There is another path," she answered, though doubt touched her tone. "Very old, very tight. If we go, we leave the horses." "We've been leaving much all our lives," I said. "Show me." The slot narrowed to shoulders, then ribs. Breath thundered. The ceiling grazed my back. Halfway through, dull thuds rolled the stone, Vance's men sealing mouths, piling brush. Smoke began to creep, patient as a hunter. We forced forward, grit in our teeth, lungs burning. The tunnel spat us into a round cavern. In the center lay a small pool, silver thread feeding it, cool air rising. I drank deep, Micah cupping water like prayer. Relief staggered me. 3 black mouths gaped ahead. 2 choked after a few yards. The third narrowed too tight. I shoved an arm into the elbow stone all around. Dead. Micah listened, still as a deer in snow. "They will smell smoke. They will wait. They'll do worse," I said. "The sheriff's paper will call us thieves. They'll hang our bodies and claim it law. Then they'll take this." I looked at the pool, life itself in the desert. I checked the Colt, 3 rounds. The Winchester 5. We built a breastwork of stone where the tunnel bent. Smoke fingered in, thin, then thicker. Micah gripped my hand. "Old stories say endings are doors you do not see until you bleed for them." "Then this is one hell of a doorway," I said, trying to smile. Bootsteps scuffed outside. A torch hissed, shadows stretching crooked. "Mr. Vance," a voice called. "We've got 'em boxed. Smoke or lead?" Vance answered smooth as velvet. "A little smoke, a little fire. I want that spring without a story." We crouched behind our wall. The pool breathed cool against my burned face. My leg throbbed. I thought of the man I used to be, the one I had come here to kill. "We hold," I said. "We hold," she echoed, lifting the Winchester. The first shot cracked smoke like lightning. A man screamed. Another cursed. I fired the Colt, sparks kissing stone. Micah worked the rifle, steady and patient, each shot measured. They charged in twos and threes, torches thrust forward, but the stone turned them back. "Hold," someone shouted. Then silence, heavy as judgment. Vance's voice again. "Patience, boys. Smoke and time are cheaper than bullets." Brush crackled, flames licked low. Air thickened, every breath borrowed. I soaked rags in the pool, tied one over her mouth, one over mine. "If we sleep," she whispered, "we don't wake." "Then we don't sleep," I answered. We sat shoulder to shoulder, smoke coiling, torches painting the cave mouth blood red. Outside, men shifted and muttered. Inside, the spring whispered, steady as prayer. And in that breathless dark, I knew. Some fights are not chosen to be won, they are chosen because a man cannot live with himself if he walks away. Hey there. Friend, take a moment and get yourself a full glass of water. It's easy to forget, but staying hydrated is crucial for your health. Also, if you've been sitting for a while, do a quick lap around the room and give your eyes a break from the screen. Your body will thank you. The canyon walls pressed close around us, high and merciless, their jagged teeth catching the last fire of the sun. The air shimmered with heat, heavy as a furnace door left open too long. My breath rasped in my throat, and the sweat stung my eyes. We were cornered, a weary duo against a dozen armed men, and every grain of sand beneath our boots whispered the same truth. There was no way out. Silas Vance's voice rose from the mouth of the canyon, cruel and certain. "You can't escape, old man. The curse on this land is what we put on it, and we're here to collect." His words bounced from wall to wall until it felt as if the desert itself was jeering. My hand tightened on the grip of my Colt. I had fought too many hopeless battles to pretend this was anything else. One man, one woman, two tired horses against rifles and torches. It was an end written clear as scripture. Yet when I turned to Micah, there was no fear in her eyes, only a sharp fire, cold and calculating. She raised her chin toward a narrow crack in the stone, a fissure so slight I would have ridden past it 100 times without a second thought. "My people," she whispered, her voice rough as gravel but steady. "We knew the land. We knew the hidden places. The cavalry, they saw mountains. They did not see the path." In that moment, I understood the so-called curse on this land wasn't a ghost story told in saloons. It was a secret, guarded for generations, written not on paper but into stone itself. The 12-cent deed I carried was nothing but a decoy. The true treasure was not gold, not even the spring, but the knowledge of these hidden arteries, the lifelines of a people who had outlasted fire and steel. We tied the horses in a shaded crease, brushing the tracks away with a juniper bough. They would not live long without water, but leaving them loose would only betray us. Then I helped Micah through the fissure. The rocks scraped my shoulders, and for a moment the dark closed around us like a tomb. Inside, the air cooled. Dampness kissed my skin. The desert weight lifted from my shoulders, replaced by a silence so deep it throbbed in my ears. Each step echoed faintly, a ghost of sound swallowed by stone. Drips fell somewhere ahead, steady as a ticking clock, counting down our chances. Micah moved with purpose. She was no fugitive here, she was a guide, leading me deeper into the memory of her people. Her hand trailed along the walls, fingertips brushing the grooves and ridges, as though reading words carved long before she was born. Every turn she chose with certainty, every pause exact. I followed, my Colt loose in my hand, every nerve stretched taut. Behind us, the canyon echoed with Vance's men's shouts, hooves striking rock, the harsh crack of torches. They had the guns, the numbers, we had the ground. From a hidden lip we watched them ride below, cursing as their torches fought the wind. Their voices betrayed them, forced bravado, nerves fraying. They believed the land theirs to claim, yet already the stone was stripping them of that arrogance. The fight that followed was no simple gun battle. It was a hunt, and for once, we were the hunters. Micah funneled them into blind pockets, narrow cuts where echoes turned whispers into thunder. She fired once, and silence swallowed the canyon. The men wheeled, shouting at phantoms. I picked my shots where stone would carry the sound, each bullet ricocheting into confusion. The hunters became the hunted, stumbling in circles, firing at shadows. Through the smoke and shouts, I glimpsed Vance. Dust streaked his fine coat, sweat tracing lines down his face. The banker's polish had cracked, revealing the fury beneath. He barked orders, but fear gnawed at his men. He had underestimated us both, a man with nothing left to lose, and a girl with everything left to protect. At last the maze drove him to me. We faced one another across a spill of pale stone, his pistol gleaming in the firelight, my Colt already leveled. Recognition flickered in his eyes, an old ledger balanced. A debt come due. You should have taken the money, Hayes, he growled. 12 cents wasn't worth your life. This was never about money, I said. My voice sounded strange to me, flat and final as the canyon itself. It's about justice. He lunged. I struck his pistol aside. The shot skittered harmlessly into stone. We grappled, two stubborn relics in a land that devours both the young and the old. His fists were fast, but mine carried years of anger and regret. My knuckles split his lip, his elbow cracked against my ribs. Pain flared hot, but I held on, driven by something stronger than flesh. At last my fist found his jaw. His body sagged, crown striking rock, breath knocked out. He lay gasping, eyes rolling with hatred. My Colt hovered, one squeeze away from finishing it, but in the corner of my sight, Micah stood, her dark eyes steady, unblinking. She said nothing. She didn't beg, didn't demand. She only watched, weighing me the way stone weighs the years. Was I still the man who had ridden with the 7th Cavalry? Or was I something else now? My finger trembled. Then I lowered the Colt. I bound his wrists with rawhide, leaving him no longer a king but a captive. Mercy was not for his sake, it was the stitch my soul still needed. Even as I tied the knot, the faint thunder of hoofbeats rolled from the canyon mouth. More men, or perhaps only echoes. In this country, greed always brought company. We pressed deeper into the tunnels, dragging Vance with us. The ground sloped downward, the air cooler, tinged with the metallic scent of minerals. Veins of quartz glimmered like drowned stars in the torchlight. My boots slipped on damp stone, shoulders scraping narrow walls. It felt as if the earth itself were alive, humming with memories too old to name. Micah moved like one guided by something more than sight. Every turn was decisive, every pause filled with purpose. I realized then she had been leading me not merely away from danger, but toward a place her people had long prepared. We reached a wide chamber, its roof arching high, the walls etched with strange patterns of salt and soot. Micah laid her palm against the stone, her eyes fierce. This is not only refuge, she said. It is trap. My people built this maze to outlast cavalry. Men in blue came once. They vanished into stone. Now Vance's men will follow same road. The truth struck me like thunder. The 12-cent deed had never been chance, it was bait. The land had been a lure, meant to draw out the greedy, to break them where the earth itself fought back. You used me, I said, though the words carried no heat, only awe. She shook her head. I gave you choice. You stayed. And I had. For the first time in decades, I did not feel tricked or trapped. I felt entrusted. We made ready. I laid out the last cartridges, 3 for the Colt, 5 for the Winchester. Micah crouched, drawing marks in the dust, showing me where echoes would multiply, where shadow would swallow us whole. Here, she said, tapping a hollow. You fire once. They think many rifles. They scatter. Her plan was cruel, simple, perfect. The stone itself would become our army. When Vance's men entered, the maze spat them forward like cattle through a chute. Their torches threw ragged shadows that writhed against the walls. Voices, meant to be steady, cracked like old timber. Micah slipped through fissures, her rifle cracking once before, vanishing into silence. A cry followed, tripled by echoes, until the men swore a dozen rifles hemmed them in. I fired where she signaled, letting bullets bounce, turning confusion into terror. The canyon betrayed them, multiplying fear until they stumbled into each other's fire. One by one, they fell. A rider blundered into a blind pocket. Micah's shot ended him there. Another, wild-eyed, broke across my sights. My Colt bucked, and he crumpled. The air grew thick with smoke, the stink of powder, the bitter tang of fear. At last, only a handful remained, and among them, Silas Vance, bound but not broken. He spat blood, eyes burning with venom. "Hayes, you'll drown in this rock. Nobody walks away." I looked at him, then at Micah, her face smeared with soot and sweat, her shoulders squared. "Maybe not," I said, "but we'll die standing, love." And as the torches guttered, as the echoes of our gunfire died into silence, I felt something stir deep inside me, not triumph, not peace, but a thread of hope, thin as wire, strong as steel. For the first time since I laid 12 cents on cursed ground, I was not only running from ghosts, I was standing. If you're watching on television, don't hesitate, grab your phone and hit subscribe to my channel so you'll never miss out on our amazing characters. We rode slow into Red Rock Creek, Vance and his men chained behind us. The canyon that had nearly buried us trailed like a banner of survival at our backs. Windows lifted, doors cracked. Whispers ran ahead of our horses like dust devils. Mothers pulled children close. For the first time, silence in that town felt like respect. We presented our case to the sheriff, a grizzled man who'd taken the badge only after the last was run out for taking Vance's money. He had chased rumors he couldn't prove. Now ledgers and shackled men did the speaking for him. His eyes were rheumy but sharp, the kind that had measured truth and lies for decades. He looked at Vance, at the defeated faces of his men, and then at Micah, her back straight, her wounds still raw, her eyes steady as bedrock. I laid out the evidence, the stolen water, the bribed officials, the false deeds. The sheriff did not interrupt, only listened. When I finished, I caught something in his expression, a flicker that told me he had been waiting for this day, perhaps longer than I knew. Vance, the man who believed money and fear could buy him anything, was a broken figure. Shackles rattled on his wrists, the arrogance drained from his face. He had underestimated us. No, he had underestimated the power of a man who had nothing left to lose, and a girl who carried the weight of generations. News of his arrest spread like wildfire, faster than any rider. Those who had taken his coin went into hiding, and the empire of lies he had built crumbled overnight. For the first time, the true owners of the land, the Apache, stood vindicated. The people of Red Rock Creek, who once looked at me with pity, now looked at me with something else. Not envy, not suspicion, but quiet respect. They saw not a fool who wasted 12 cents, but a man who had found his honor again. They saw not a ghost, but someone who had chosen to stand and fight. And they saw Micah, not a hunted girl skulking in shadows, but a warrior who had protected her people and, in doing so, saved the town as well. But respect does not always bring belonging. We had done what we came to do, and there was nothing left for us to linger over. I knew the fight for justice was not finished. It never truly is in the desert. This was only the closing of one chapter, the beginning of another. The ride out of Red Rock Creek was quieter than our arrival. The same townsfolk who had once whispered about curses now stood on porches, tipping their hats, bowing heads, offering bread or water. It wasn't charity, it was reverence. They had seen Vance paraded in chains, his pride stripped bare, and for a moment they believed the desert could return something instead of always taking. Micah rode beside me, her posture tall though her side still throbbed from the wound. There was dignity in her, the kind a chief carries, the kind that made even the hard-bitten men of Red Rock Creek lower their eyes. She was no longer the hunted girl. She was a symbol, for her people, for mine, for anyone who had ever been told that greed was stronger than truth. That night we camped on a ridge above town. The canyon stretched below like an open book, every line of stone a story written long before us. The stars burned hard and sharp, the way only desert stars can. I spoke of things I had